Welcome to the channel. Today, we're going to see if I've improved on my foreign pronunciations, because this week, we're going to be taking a look at Ferris wheel press, Lac Moraine, Enchanté. Now, for all of my French viewers, I apologize for butchering that, but hey, it is what it is. Back to the ink, what had me wanting to buy this one was simply the bottle design. While FWP offers a nice array of colors over on their website, it's just something about the bottle that had me caring more for it than the contents within. That being said, I do like the color, so reviewing it is still going to be fun, at least for me. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. And I'm going to have 85ml of a pretty good color, so it's win-win. But before we get to that, I do like that this ink comes in its own Crown Royal bag, and that's giving me some pretty interesting ideas for once I've completely emptied this bottle of ink. This is the first aquamarine ink that I've had on the channel, and it's doing a pretty good job of setting the bar for any that follow. We're not going to be getting a heavy shading ink, nor are we going to be getting a sheener, but we are getting a solid color. The lighter shades definitely have more of a powdered look to them, and you might see that in an EF or UEF, but the shades on the right are definitely more my style. This throwback to my homeland really comes through with any good flowing nib. And I know I don't show it in this review, but I was able to get that fade to black out of a Sailor Music nib, so it is possible. Speaking of writing samples, this one is being done with the Moonman T1 with a fine nib on Tomoe River paper. Like I mentioned when we were looking at the color swatch, from a nib that doesn't have a choked off flow, this ink is going to give you a consistent aquamarine that was seen in the midtones. Also, we know from previous reviews that this nib does allow the shading of an ink to come through if it's there. So I'm willing to say that on Tomoe, the shading is going to be fairly elusive. It also seems to be coming out fairly dry. The plus side here though is that if this is a quick drying ink, at least it's acting well lubricated and isn't giving me any flow or starting issues on TR. Side note, I think the color of this ink is a nice complement to the white temperature of the paper in this Musubi notebook. Lac Moraine is also a very good complement to the blue aluminum of the T1. While I continue on the TR, let's talk about that bottle. I've got some really interesting bottles in my collection, but none of them have the sheer amount of volume that this one provides. I actually wonder how well it would fit in the feet of the Diamine Blue Series bottles if I were to flip that one upside down and then set this one on top of it. Actually, keep an eye out on my Instagram if I remember to do that after filming this review. Now, moving on to Rhodia, I feel like I'm getting much more of the same performance. The one thing I am noticing though, is that the Rhodia paper is reinforcing my thought that this is a quick drying ink. I'm starting to doubt the lubrication level of the ink though. Notice how we're getting a thinner and lighter line on Rhodia as compared to Tomoe. I'm keeping the same slow tempo while writing, and the line width is pretty apparent. I'm also noticing that I'm getting more dynamic shading on Rhodia when compared to Tomoe. Now, part of that once again has to do with the difference in flow that we're getting, but this is a good example of why I use two different papers when looking at inks. Sometimes there isn't much difference at all, and then you have moments like this. If I had to pick a favorite though, I much prefer the look of this ink on Rhodia, as the thinner line and slightly better shading profile make it stand out better than it does on Tomoe. Looking at the dry time also brings out some of the other properties that we were seeing. On TR, we are dry by 10 seconds, but there is very little shading going on. It's not a bad look and pretty well behaved. On Rhodia, you get a little more shading, and you can see that we're almost dry at 5 seconds. There's just the tiniest smidge when compared to the 5-second mark on TR, so overall, this is a very passable dry time for both papers. Moving on to the water test, the writing sample was left to dry for 10 minutes before filming, and the overall soak time was 35 seconds from the last drop to the paper towel. And I've got to say that this was a somewhat expected result. Most of the lighter inks I've used do not play nice with water, and this is no exception. But how much does that play into my overall thoughts on this ink? Not that much. The color is very pleasing, and it's nice to see aquamarine done right. The full-size bottle gives you a pretty good value at 42 cents per ml. The bottle is substantial as well, with a metal cap holding back the ink, but the one part where I am slightly disappointed is the press photo of this bottle. I know I'm one of those old guys yelling for you to get off my lawn, but I would rather have a real photo of the bottle than the one that's been adjusted for illustrative purposes. Back to the positives though. The dry time for this ink is really fast, so if you're in a situation where you don't need to worry about water performance and just need something that dries quickly, then this is a good way to go. So overall, this is a 7 or 8 out of 10 for me. And that's gonna wrap it up for Lac Moraine. If you liked the video, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're one of the 73% that aren't, and if you want channel extras or want to support the channel, I have a Patreon link down in the show notes. Most importantly though, don't drink the ink.